How do you assess the Indian Air Force's role in this very unusual 88-hour conflict?
Struck them with impunity. None of those strikes got intercepted. At the same time, don't forget, we were able to prevent any of their strikes being successful. We didn't allow them to strike any of our targets. So I think it was, from Air Force perspective, a huge achievement.
Do you think the political leadership has today understood air power in a way that it wasn't understood previously?
Everything starts with political mindset and political leadership. And it's not only a question of understanding and utilizing air power, it's a question of taking this cross-border terrorist issue of terrorism head on.
Why did you terminate the conflict when you were so ahead?
People need to understand. Our objectives were very clear. It was terror targets. Because they hit us militarily, we responded. And stopping at that time was very important.
Right.
You cannot go on endlessly.
Right.
That was never the objective. That was never the plan.
You think there's something
that has
for President Trump to take note of?
Oh, it's for the world to take note of. And the world has taken note.
You think theatre commands are the way forward to fight future wars? Hello and welcome to the Sandeep Unnithan Show, your weekly dose of defense, geopolitics and much more. Today I'm privileged to have with me at Chakra Studios Air Chief Marshal RKS Bhadauria, former Chief of the Air Staff. We're going to be talking about the Indian Air Force and the Indian military 1 year after Operation Sindoor, the 88 hours that changed strategy on the subcontinent. Air Chief Marshal Bhadauria, welcome to my show.
Thank you very much. Always great to interact with you.
Sir, 1 year since Operation Sindoor, how do you assess the Indian Air Force's role in this very unusual 88-hour conflict?
Oh, I think with every day that has passed post-Op Sindoor, and as we look back where we are over last 1 year, what we did in Op Sindoor, the real realization of what we achieved has only seeped in more. It makes us prouder by the day. So as you look back, I think now everybody has realized how important it was and how effective it was on what was done. So if you just look at Op Sindoor, apart from robust and very audacious political decision to select the kind of targets that were selected, Prime Minister Modi was very clear, unimaginable punishment to terrorists and their backers. But the targets and selecting Bahawalpur and Muridke, it was unthinkable. So the choice of targets, I think, a very clear message. To achieve those targets, the kind of tri-services effort that was done to achieve all 9 targets against a fully prepared, Pakistan. After Balakot, Pakistan knew there is no question of air power not being used or deep penetration strike or targets being just on the LAC. They were prepared.
Right.
But I don't think they were prepared even for Bahawalpur and Muridke in their mental
right.
psyche.
The number of targets.
The number and the kind of target.
Right.
So to achieve, again, that kind of target in a very short time, very coordinated, precise attacks, and to hit Bahawalpur and Muridke with the accuracy and the kind of weapons that was chosen, it shows how much the Air Force had evolved, how much the Air Force had learnt, and from Balakot and prepared.
Right.
And what happened thereafter, a very calibrated, very calm and firm response over next 2 days.
Right.
To drone attacks, to loitering munition attack, from huge disruptive attacks from Pakistan.
Right.
So it was responded, but very intelligently. Some radars were taken off, some SAM were taken off. So it was all shaping the battlefield.
Right.
And when they really tried to attack our military and air bases, etc., substantial attempt at a ramp off, I think Pakistan Air Force thought that they can do some massive attack and thereafter declare victory. And that was not only responded, we spiked and did that 9th and 10th, what was done, those 11 bases.
Right.
So I think that is the gold standard in terms of Air Force implementation of, selection and targeting.
Right.
The kind of weapons, getting all targets, doing the kind of damage, command centers, runways, the assets on ground.
Radars.
Right. So we got them blind in areas that we wanted and struck them with impunity. None of those strikes got intercepted. Those weapons got intercepted. At the same time, don't forget, we were able to prevent any of their strikes being successful. We didn't allow them to penetrate. We didn't allow them to strike any of our targets,
Right.
Air Force or military. So I think it was, from Air Force perspective, a huge achievement.
Right.
Huge
Absolutely.
achievement.
Huge achievement indeed, Chief Marshal Bhadauria. But there's lots to unpack in what you just said. And the first thing that struck me was the political will that you mentioned. I authored this book on 26/11, and I remember some of the people who were present in that very, very tense CCS meeting after the attacks, where the Air Chief Marshal Fali Major, presented these options of striking at terrorist infrastructure in Pakistan. That was not, uh, it was not greenlit. He was not given an okay for that. Do you think the political leadership has today, almost 2 decades later, understood air power in a way that it wasn't understood previously?
Oh, for sure, for sure. Everything starts with political mindset and political leadership. And it's not only a question of understanding and utilizing air power, it's a question of taking this cross-border terrorist issue of terrorism head on. It's a statement of how the political leadership has evolved and how this government decided to act on it. So this was a fundamental shift, I think, a very important shift. And the kind of I think Uri was the first one. So you start with
Yes.
surgical strikes, you
Right.
start with the Balakot. So these were all stepping stones to this change of direction happened over time. Firstly, zero tolerance policy. And when Pahalgam happened, of course, this
You
kind
were
of
you were
carnage,
ready.
of course, all three services would have been ready. They would have expected. But even I'm sure services were surprised at the kind of free hand given and the kind of targets that were
Right.
cleared to be hit. So that would have been a bit of a surprise for services, because it was a very strong decision.
Did you always
Again,
intend to hit these targets?
no, it is part of the target list that is always there. But to be
Muridke
able to
and
choose,
Bahawalpur have
yes,
always been part
there's
of
a
your.
number of targets.
Right.
But to be able to decide of a peacetime situation against a cross-border terror act that we will choose these targets,
Right.
that's not an easy decision. It is fraught with political risks. So for the political leadership to decide, it was highly audacious. I've always said so. It is a tremendous sign of what of political will and political resolve. Earlier there was dossier policy, and we would send dossiers, and we would be worried about nuclear threats and nuclear armed countries. So what will happen? So
Right.
we kept getting stuck in what if loops. It was no longer so. So just imagine the kind of change that has happened, and everything starts with political direction and
Is that
decision
the
making.
most important thing in
I
the
think that was
employment?
fundamental.
Right.
That was the most game changing. That is most important, and it's a classic demonstration of how the political will and the political direction has doctrinal effects on how the defense services will fight. It has changed the way we fight. It has changed the way we need to think. It has changed our industry to a level of involvement in our own defense industrial complex. See the fillip given to our own industrial development. You see the kind of indigenous systems that were fielded in Op Sindoor and the kind of performance.
Right.
So it has changed our trajectory for good. It's a huge doctrinal shift. Okay, it's absolute. People call it a big paradigm shift. I think it's gone much beyond that, and it has drawn now the red lines. What PM Modi said, that every cross-border terror
Yeah.
would be treated as an act of war. Again, you see the implications of that. The message to Pakistan and the message to the world that we will no longer accept this. So that's a huge change. And for services, again, to be prepared to respond for this kind of thing,
Right.
it's a huge ask. And the services will never be found wanting. They will work towards it. They will ensure that the political mandate they deliver in full and more than full.
Right. So that's very interesting, Chief Marshal Bhadauria. The fact that you mentioned that there's been, of course, a doctrinal shift. We've seen that, and the Prime Minister mentioned it on the 12th of May. But there is a school of thought which says that, India does not have a does not have a defense strategy written down, and we don't have a white paper yet. We're supposed to get a white paper. But you're saying that in the absence of a strategy itself, we've got very clear political directives. And therefore, do you think that we don't really need a stated defense white paper to lay out our
Yeah,
strategic
the
objectives?
defense white paper is not the only way to work. If you think that we don't have a defense strategy, I think everybody who says this is highly mistaken. It's highly mistaken. We have a very clear-cut policy. We have a strategy. We have, put the entire policy in place. The kind of actions that are being taken for integration, bottom up, there are huge changes. And you saw the results of integration in the response to Sindoor itself.
Right.
It was a highly integrated action that was taken. Okay, so to say this that we don't have a white paper, I don't think this is just chaff as far as I am concerned. What strategy we have, what is our mindset, what is our level of preparedness, what is our capability, have we evolved over last 10 years, 15 years? The results are here to show.
Right.
That we are able to undertake such level of commitments and we are able to deliver to the extent that when we terminated Op Sindoor, believe me, with the kind of damages that we did and virtually zero damage against us.
Right.
Okay, none of our bases they were able to strike, none of our military installation. Is anybody's dream, any defense services dream to end a conflict with. It's a huge achievement. People should understand this.
So this was again, a big point of criticism that why did you terminate the conflict when you were so ahead? Do you think there was, in hindsight, you've been proved right with that decision that was taken?
Oh,
on the
this,
10th?
the people were really excited, and I don't blame them at all when they started seeing the pictures of 9th night and 10th morning of the strike over those 11 bases and the kind of damage done. So all the pictures were still not out because 10th strike, the last wave, I don't think the pictures were still on the media.
Right.
But Air Force did well, the Ministry of Defense did well to, the moment there were pictures available, to give it out and show the results to the country. So the people were expecting, for them, the announcement of ceasefire was too sudden.
Right.
Okay, it was too sudden. We were at the peak virtually. And I don't blame them for not understanding why are you stopping now. But let me tell you, it was perfectly timed. You must understand, you cannot ignore that these are two nuclear capable countries.
Right.
In a nuclear capable two countries, this kind of conflict where we are attacking their bases, the kind of control, understanding of escalation ladder and the kind of control demonstrated by our CDS and by our service chiefs, I think it's again a huge achievement. It is huge achievement. And within that escalation ladder, to be able to strike their bases and do this escalation spike on the 10th and virtually force a termination.
Right.
Attacking a nuclear country, disabling nearly 11 kind of bases, and this hugely, we stuck with impunity across Pakistan. It's unthinkable. And thereafter, we virtually forced them to come to the ceasefire, and it was perfectly timed. People need to understand. Our objectives were very clear. It was terror targets. Because they hit us militarily, we responded. And we responded robustly, more than required in terms of their action. And stopping at that time was very important. You cannot go on endlessly. That was never the objective. That was never the plan.
You think there's something
so that has to be understood
for President Trump to take note of?
Oh, it's for the world to take note of. And the world has taken note. Let me tell you, the entire analytical, defense analytical world has understood, despite the kind of narrative being attempted by Pakistan, they have really understood what India achieved. And that termination, again, is another feather in the cap. And it shows how fused the politico-military and the civil, all institutions were to be able to do the kind of escalation that was required and stop at the right time. It was it was seamless fusion. Again, signs of how we have evolved.
Right.
Okay, and this is huge. I think it is, the people should be proud, and people are understanding now.
Right.
Exactly what was done. And we have to thank, the Iran-Israel situation and the Iran-US conflict.
We've seen that. In fact, I was going to ask you that, that a few months after Op Sindoor, you saw the 12-day war between Iran and Israel play out. Non-contact kinetic. And then February 28th, the United States, Israel, and Iran. Again, non-contact kinetic, where you see for the first time, possibly since the Korean War, American bases have been hit on a very large scale. Do you think that the Iranians took a playbook out of Operation Sindoor? They drew lessons from your operation?
Yeah, they would have certainly seen and read and understood what we did. I don't think they were able to copy the playbook fully because their defense and their entire network to be able to defend themselves were disabled very quickly by the
They didn't
airstrikes
have an
of.
air force.
They had an air force, they had a network, they had surface-to-air missiles,
Right.
but obviously it was not taken and not to the level and not to the capability that we have, and therefore they were disabled very fast in the early stages of war itself by the US and Israeli airstrikes. So that is where I think they went horribly wrong, or their capability was unable to stand at all. What they have done in GCC countries, I think they have gamed this fairly well for this kind of strikes by US and Israel. That they started attacking the Gulf countries where firstly they were well within reach, they were in the reach of more of their ballistic missiles, and the kind of use of drones that they did, very cheap, very disruptive. The entire setup in Gulf was is very huge. A lot of weapons within the Gulf countries and a lot of American deployment, but they were all tailored towards highly capable threats, technologically advanced, conventional threats
Right.
and advanced threats, ballistic missiles.
Yeah.
They were not fully yet ready for the disruptive attacks by drones. They were not. Okay, and that is the starting point of how why Iranians were able to disrupt a lot of things.
Right.
And that's a big lesson, and that's a big, I think, plus for how Iran used, and of course their actions in Hormuz. So I think they knew their strengths, they knew their weaknesses, but this strength they utilized in the area that gave them maximum. If you just see the kind of targeting they done, 50% of the targeting was against UAE, 49 odd percent. 20% on Saudi, against Saudi, and 20% against Israel.
Right.
So they were not firing only on Israel.
Right.
They devoted a lot of attention in this, and that was because of the not only American bases. They started attacking, vital areas of the Gulf countries itself.
Right.
So they changed the focus itself,
Right.
and they were able to achieve a lot.
So a lot of arguments are being made now in the light of Op Sindoor, where the Indian Air Force didn't cross the border. We stood off and we launched our weapons, non-contact, kinetic, the Iran war. You've seen that. There's a case being made that rocket forces, artillery, long-range artillery, precision missiles, drones are the way ahead. Rather than investing only in Air Force, you go for this. What's your take on this? Has warfare shifted entirely towards this non-kinetic means, or man fighters are still important?
No, it is important. We have to have a mix. Okay, we should not draw wrong lessons.
Right.
With drones alone, you cannot win a war. You can stretch a war.
You think Iran showed you that?
They are able to stretch.
Right.
But if you think that they have won a war against US or Israel, it's not so. You see the kind of destruction they have had to face.
Their airspace is
their entire air force is gone. Their entire navy is practically gone. So the impact, the destruction by US and Israeli airstrikes on the critical targets is huge.
Right.
It's a different matter that the objectives chosen of regime change, etc. They are still continuing. So the war is getting protracted because of that. If it was only military objectives, they should have stopped in 10 days or 12 days maximum. Those objectives were achieved. They could have walked back. So Iran, with all its ballistic missiles, okay, look at the real damage done in Israel. In spite of the kind of cluster munitions later on used, etc. So there are limitations of ballistic missiles always, and there are pluses and minuses on each side.
Right.
Also remember what has been done there. There's a lot of asymmetry in combat capability. If you see US and Israel versus Iran, okay, so a lot that happens there is not directly applicable here. So for us, we are going to fight Pakistan or China.
Right.
It's a different kind of adversary, highly competitive, peer in terms of technology and weapons. If you see at China, they are technologically ahead. In numbers of weapons, they're ahead. So this is a totally different ballgame. You have to have the best of everything.
Right.
It's not without reason that China is developing their fifth generation, the kind of numbers of aircraft that they've gone in. You think China doesn't have ballistic missiles? They have the maximum.
Yeah.
So look at that. So there has to be a combination of ballistic capability. What the combat capability from aircraft gives you, and the kind of flexibility, the kind of repeatability. 1,000 odd strikes with 4 weapons. Can you imagine 4,000 ballistic missiles being done over 10 days? No.
Right.
Okay, so and the kind of precision that airborne weapons give,
Right.
how much they have evolved.
Right.
So there are different, core strengths. So we need to develop and holistically. Drones have a lot of potential.
Yes.
Loitering munitions have a lot of potential. We need to surely expand in that. It's a huge disruptive force, very cheap. You need to capitalize on it.
Yeah.
We need to have manned unmanned teaming for sure.
Right.
We need to have stealth. We need to have stealth unmanned. We need to team in the future. So we have to develop holistically across the board. So these debates are too narrow, I think.
Right.
We have to look at the larger picture and see what our requirements are, looking at our landscape,
Right.
and develop accordingly.
Right. So, when we were talking about hardware, I was just thinking about how most of the hardware that was used during Operation Sindoor, you've played a role in acquiring most of them, right? Whether it's the S-400 surface-to-air missile that we acquired at great opposition against, the United States opposed that sale. You have the Rafale, of course, the case that you drove. But there's also another very interesting story that you were telling me a little while earlier about the air-launched BrahMos, which you worked with Dr. Pillai to make that happen. Tell us that story of how...
No, air-launched, Air Force decided that the BrahMos, we must have a version that we can put on Su-30. This is very early in the program. So that time I was posted to air headquarters and interacting with Dr. Pillai. I was a 2-star that time. And the decision we took was that we will do the modification in-house with HAL.
Right.
That was a very, very, big step that we took, because the Russian proposal was firstly very costly.
Yeah.
And secondly, we wanted to, Air Force was keen that we had seen what if we do our upgrade ourselves indigenously, there's a lot of advantage. So if the modification was done by us, we were looking at firstly the pace of modification subsequently, and we were very keen that we do it ourselves. So I had separate meeting with HAL, and then we finally did the mod ourselves, which was a huge step. It was a very big missile. It was risky to do it ourselves. The Russians had told us not to do so. There were a lot of pressure, but everybody held ground, and we were able to succeed. I think that was a big, good show to HAL for being able to swing this and
Right.
Do it successfully.
What's
And a big, role played by Dr. Pillai.
Right.
He was the DG that time, and he said, yes, we will just do it.
What is the understanding from all of these programs that you've driven, whether it's the Rafale or the LCA also, of course, the LCA Tejas, let's not forget that one, the BrahMos. What does this tell you about the weapons that India needs to fight and win wars?
We have to firstly build indigenously. BrahMos is example, but BrahMos is also in collaboration. But it has already demonstrated what it can do. So high caliber weapons, precise, long range, we have to not only localize production, we have to design and develop indigenously. A lot of good work has happened in 100-kilometer, 150-kilometer class weapons already.
Right.
A lot of DRDO projects are close to success. Those need to be converted to longer ranges. Okay, so firstly, I think long range precision weapons are very critical, and they should go on to more number of aircraft. We should do the modification ourselves indigenously.
Right.
The next, all the lot of aircraft that are coming in, be it LCA Mark II, be it AMCA, be it if there's talk of procuring more Rafale, our weapon suits and some of the sensors, as much as possible, we should put indigenous.
But the French aren't allowing us to put the source codes. They're
The
not
number of
giving us
aircraft we are
source
buying. No, we will have the modification ability. You don't go by what is coming out. Air Force will never agree unless we get the ability to modify with our own weapons subsequently.
Right.
If we are buying this
That's
number of
a
aircraft,
red
I
line.
think that should be a red line.
Right.
And it will happen.
Right.
You don't have to have the full source code. It is more complex than that.
Right.
So there's no point getting into the detail. But my larger picture is you should be able to modify yourself. We are able to do that on Su-30 because we have taken those integration rigs. On MiG-29 we have done it.
Right.
On Mirage 2000 we are doing
Right.
it in a different manner, but we are already succeeding. Okay, so we always look for this capability and it will happen.
Yeah.
Okay, on HL, on Jaguars we are totally doing ourselves. So this is critical. We should be able to modify. So it doesn't need full source code. It needs the relevant clearances, relevant integration rigs, and that will happen.
Right.
That will happen. Without
Right.
that, I don't think the this thing will be greenlit by the Air Force.
Right.
Important thing is we should develop the kind of weapons that we need to go onto it.
Right.
A lot of success in that area, but that needs to be expedited. Sensors, we should start putting our own.
Right.
Then you asked for development. I think on loitering munition and unmanned, we need to do a lot of. I think
I
development
was
is work
looking at
within
the
the country.
timelines for MUMTs, MUMTs, and
Yeah,
50. They're all in
this
the
is a
2030s.
problem in our industry. We start a project and it carries on. MUMT was launched good 6-7 years back.
Right.
And even I'm talking of HL initiative in MM2,
Right.
good, well ahead of its time, but it's taken a fair amount of time.
Why do you think it's taken
Again,
so
it's
long?
it's a issue of how much focus and how much money we are putting in,
Right.
and I think all that needs to do. The kind of reforms that government has come in. If we are asking for something, it is given. So we need to really put our energies into it.
Right. You're saying we are not putting our energy enough
we need
in
to
it?
put forward. I won't say
Right.
we're not putting. That
Right.
will be incorrect. But I think time has come that we really need to put more energy. We need to give more visibility. We need to be proactive from services to give the kind of requirement visibility, not visibility, a confirmation
Right.
that I want so many squadrons of this upfront.
Right.
Those discussions should go up. So we need to kind of on all fronts
Yeah.
be proactive to make this happen.
But the Air Force has been very proactive, as in the
Oh no,
Ghatak,
MEM2 we
60.
launched
Yeah.
long time back.
Right.
So we have been proactive.
Yeah.
But the kind of time that it is taking to design in this thing, that is huge.
Right.
We need to cut that, and for that also there is effort required from everybody concerned.
Right. Right.
Okay, so this entire mindset and ecosystem involved in this needs
Right.
to change the trajectory.
So, while we are on the first anniversary of Op Sindoor, there is also that very worrying prospect of shrinking squadrons of the Indian Air Force. Fighter squadrons are coming down. One hears that there are 30 squadrons, they could go down to 29 even. Is that something that worries you a lot as a former air chief? You've actually seen
No,
that
it is a cause of worry. It's a cause of worry, but it's not good enough to just worry about it. Whether actions have been taken, let me assure you, a lot of actions have been taken.
Right.
It's not without reason the government has ordered the next LCS squadrons given clearance to Mark II.
Right.
Mark II, a lot of support is being given by MOD. AMCA now a lot of support. I think the kind of energy that you see within the private sector, startup, and this innovation world, that needs to now plug into this ecosystem needs to change, and I think DRDO labs and DPSUs can play a big role in that.
Right.
To me, these are the people with real core strengths and core capability.
Right.
They need to handle the private sector and startups and this and transition to a ecosystem which is more transparent, which is more cohesive, more synergistic.
Right.
So I think that needs to happen. That needs to really happen. We have to, they talk of silos in defense services. I think we should look at silos that are there in the industry. Those need to be broken and really synergize.
Right.
I think this change, and especially with the government that is giving you everything, kind of reforms that are coming. You project a problem, you are supported. So it's all a question of for the industry to take up what else they want from the government. It'll all come.
Right.
I think the onus is on the industry, and DRDO labs and DPSUs have a big role to play. Industry itself, the big industrial players have a big role to play.
Right.
The startup also, no point carry on crying. You have to start demonstrating. You have to start working.
Right.
You have to synergize yourself with and develop. You can't have very optimistic promises and timelines
From the service?
from startup side.
From the startups, right.
That also happens.
Right.
So and services, of course, we need to change the pace at which we procure, the kind of reforms required.
Yeah.
All that is happening.
Right.
I'm aware that
Right.
MOD is taking a lot of proactive action on this.
So you were earlier mentioning this point about jointness among the services. You saw that politico-military fusion, in a sense, we can call it that, while executing Operation Sindoor. There is also, in the backdrop, you have theater commands being talked about, the jointmanship, jointness, warfighting. All of that is a function of that jointmanship that you've been talking about for so many years. Do you think Op Sindoor will actually accelerate that? You think theater commands are the way forward to fight future wars?
Yeah, see, the integration is absolutely essential. It is inevitable, will happen. Okay, it is online. Signs of that you saw within Op Sindoor. That's the point I was making. It was a highly synergistic operation, totally discussed, totally integrated. So the kind of integration work that has already happened in the services is there to see. Okay, and it's only a matter of time where these structural reforms will start taking shape further. But whether within the services this has happened, operationally you've seen what has happened. So it's very important to have a joint planning, to have totally transparent way of working to see what is done, put the right force on the right place, and totally coordinated. Everything was done.
Right.
Everything was done, and you see the kind of results. So I think the services are well aware. They are working very well towards it. I'm just going by the signs that Op Sindoor has shown, and some talks that I attended from CDS. I have no doubt that good work is going on towards that direction.
Right. And how will theaterization change our responses to something like what happened in Pahalgam? Will it hasten the retaliation?
No, so see, the template would remain similar like you did in Op Sindoor, and the same thing needs to be taken into if you come up once you come up with theaters, that whichever is the assigned theater or the concerned theater would execute in a similar manner. So it is important that what you have seen in Op Sindoor and the kind of speed and scale with which decision making was done and implementation was done, that template follows. So it is very important to get the template right. Just remember, we don't have unlimited resources. You can't look at US or China and their theaters, and their resources are different. Their way of functioning is different. We have to look at our resources and have the right structure and the how you will function within that structure, how you will maximize the use of resources. You cannot lock resources. Air Force in particular, but I would say even for Army and Navy, it's equally important. You cannot have resources locked up in sectors. So there has to be ways and means how you will execute, and those flexibilities and operational things should be part of whatever restructuring you do, and which I'm sure is happening. Which everybody is sanguine about these things, and I'm sure they are more intelligent than me, and they would do the needful.
So I was just recalling what you said about Op Sindoor, as in it answered a problem that had been looking at you in the face for several decades, which is Pakistan's sponsorship of terror and how to respond to it militarily, given the fact that you're in a nuclear environment, two nuclear weapon states, and Pakistan has used what is called nuclear weapons-enabled terrorism. Sindoor has given you an answer to that. There is also another paradigm which has been there for much longer than that, from the 60s, which is the two-front war, the collusivity between Pakistan and China. Do you believe that the template that you worked out in Op Sindoor, which is a swift series of attacks driven by the Air Force and by elements from the ground, precision strikes, etc., that gives you a template for fighting a two-front war with China and Pakistan, where you have the ability now, using the Air Force and the Navy and the Army, to completely, hold one front, which is Pakistan, and then focus on fighting China?
Yeah, see, two-front war has many connotations, I would say. Firstly, any conflict with Pakistan, even small conflict, if you say of Sindoor kind of situation, we have to be rest assured that there is background collusion from China. Collusion in terms of supplying information, supplying weapons, quickly supplying, hastening whatever is left, or supplying even if it is not ordered.
We saw that during
And we saw that
Sindoor.
happening
Yeah.
there, and that I think is to be presumed that that will happen. So we need to be prepared. We were aware about it. We need to be even more prepared, and getting even real-time ISR from a host of Chinese satellites to Pakistan gives them a big capability in terms of what they have, how much they can see
Right.
in depth across us. Okay, so that is one is important. If you're fighting a conflict with China, my own view is that China will never allow Pakistan to come up proactively to join them and aid them and help them to fight India. I think if the day they do that, I think they have already lost the war. So I don't think practically, if there's a conflict with China, China will allow Pakistan to be proactively involved in conflict. But war with China, collusion from Pakistan in providing all help, they'll go running and they'll be sitting and they'll provide all kind of background help for
Right.
sure. So collusion you have to cater. But the final, you don't know how geopolitics move. And we cannot ignore the fact that there is a possibility that both China and Pakistan, normally more initiated by Pakistan, that we could be fighting them.
Right.
That's the last end state, and we need to be prepared. And I think that's what you're asking.
Yes.
So first is the probability of that. It is the last end state kind of situation. Is one of the probability. To me, probability is less, but we need to be prepared. And in that case, what you are saying is the kind of philosophy we would need to work that time. Firstly, we are working towards resources, looking at China. It gives us more capability for the future. Pakistan would have to be held off and rapidly tackled, and I think air power will play a very, very effective role to disable their bases and their capability to interfere rapidly and concentrate on China.
Right.
So it's not a easy situation to tackle, but it's a situation that should the need arise, I'm sure will be tackled. You don't work these kind of capabilities in the defense services
Right.
and shy away from any possibility.
Right.
Okay, should that arise, even that would be tackled.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's heartening to hear that Air Chief Marshal Bhadauria, the fact that you've wargamed all of this, and clearly Op Sindoor is something that had been in the pipeline as well for several years, starting from Balakot and possibly even before that. But it's interesting that the Prime Minister chose at the Red Fort address on the 15th of August last year to mention the Sudarshan Chakra defense and offense system. Tell us what your understanding of this is. How does it leverage capabilities that we've already developed in-house? We've not discussed the IACCS.
Oh, yes, that is the heart of what our capability is for over our air defense network.
Right.
IACCS is totally indigenous, totally conceptualized by Air Force and developed by Bell. It was a joint team that worked on it. It's a huge success. Initial program of 8-10 years of development. Thereafter, we have done a massive upgrade, and that is what is getting implemented.
Right.
So we are implementing against 10 nodes, gives us huge capability, a totally networked environment, and results you saw in Op Sindoor. The ISCCS integrated with weapons. Every aircraft that flies is integrated with it. Every combat today is done on this network. Okay, so entire conduct of war in Op Sindoor in terms of assets in space or defense against anything was conducted from there. So this is very important. This will become the heart of Sudarshan that you're talking of.
Right.
The Air Force ISCCS is complemented with Army Akash Tir.
Right.
Akash Tir is their network, which networks their entire radar and their weapon system.
Yeah.
So at LAC, borders looking into this.
Yeah.
So that gets networked. That is what will, and I think their further strengthening needs to be done in counter UAS systems, even in to some extent in ISIS, but there it will get factored to develop that, to tackle that kind of threat. So with this Akash Tir integrated in ISCCS, the networks gets completed in relevant areas along with naval networks too.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
We should not forget that. So this gives us the basic defensive, and within this defensive, the offensive net. That means all your SAMs are integrated. All your aircraft with offensive capability also are part of it.
Right.
And we have to go to the next level. I think if I read Sudarshan right, we have to integrate our ballistic missile defenses. Our assets in space needs to now, that is the next level of integration that needs to come into this. So entire space sensor network needs to get integrated. Somewhere the space situational awareness, which will initially be separate, but the relevant parts of that needs to get integrated into this network.
Right.
So overall, our network needs to go to that level with a near persistent ISR and every single other weapon integrated. So that is when Sudarshan will reach its final end state.
Right.
So the elements are already there.
Yeah.
The basics, I think, are there. Our indigenous capability to do it is there. I think that's a great announcement by the Prime Minister. And we need to work on that indigenously to expand this current. The heart of that is already there.
Right.
So we need to expand these ICCS to undertake all this, integrate everything else firstly, call it with a new name, whatever you want to do, but integrate further.
You think the timelines for this are too far in the future? 2035 is the deadline that he had given for that. But given the threats that we face on our western and northern borders, do you think it needs to be expedited?
No, it needs to be worked in phases. If there are elements of it which will take time, elements when you talk of space and you talk of real, the ballistic missile defense fully getting integrated in other issues, but we need to do it in phases. So the core concepts and the core capability already exists. Their large capability exists.
Right.
So we build from there and start integrating and start putting further layers and start putting further modifications.
Right.
Like even ICCS with even without waiting for Sudarshan, the space assets and other virtually every sensor in the air and space needs to feed into it in real time.
Right.
So in the decision making loop, the situational awareness has to go multifold. That is only when the persistent ISR has any meaning.
That calls for more investment in space assets.
That calls for investment in space assets, which is going to happen, but integration of those assets within ISCCS.
Right.
And indirectly, it will get integrated with Akash Tir. ICCS Akash Tir are integrated. Right. So everybody in the decision, in the leadership, role will have the right information. The real-time information of what he needs in the very next. So this needs to happen immediately. And so these elements need to keep expanding and give the final Sudarshan Chakra.
And it has to happen in phases.
It has to happen in phases. So I think that is the best way and the fastest way.
Right.
And the fastest way. If you launch an independent program, at times, how programs work. They don't look at the existing one and they reinvent many of the things.
Reinvent the wheel.
Reinvent the wheel.
Or reinvent the Sudarshan Chakra in this case.
We need to take what we have and develop hugely, and we can do it rapidly. It's a huge task given by the Prime Minister. Whoever is working on it, DRDO, services, they should really work proactively and do it right.
Right. What are the other capabilities, Air Chief Marshal Bhadauria, that we need to look at in the years ahead that are going to be critical? The Chief of Defence Staff, General Chauhan, mentioned recently that the security environment of the world was such that countries are now resorting to force to achieve their political objectives. In such a volatile global environment, what are the kind of capabilities that you would like India to develop in the years ahead very rapidly?
Yeah. I would start with what we don't have or what we should get. I mentioned persistent ISR. I think our capabilities of sensors in space, indigenous. When I'm talking capability, I'm talking indigenous. Needs to come up really fast. So SBS programs that are coming, it should have capabilities of indigenous design and developed sensors on that. Okay, across the board, all kind of sensors. Those need to get integrated in our networks. In all the whichever way the tri-service network is progressing. versions of ISCs in the future, ISCs,
right.
Akash Tir combined. Okay, so that is one. So persistent ISR is, I think, most important. Thereafter, integrating all existing communications, securing our communication with quantum tech.
Right.
Okay, I think AI is a field where we haven't started real work in terms of developing systems and capabilities to be able to support our not only decision making loop, but in the moment it goes to super intelligence, I think the AI needs to come into design of the next generation weapons. A faster design cycle, a quick implementation, cheaper and more capable weapons for the future. At the moment, we are looking at, we already discussed, so I won't repeat. Longer range, longer precision, sensor, etc. But using ASI, building towards use of ASI for design, I think is the next step. In terms of weapons, platforms, capability, I think we know enough. All that needs to be explorated, whether it is stealth, whether it is unmanned capabilities for all three services, whether it is naval evolution of naval platforms, submarines, the unmanned portion in particular. Which direction should army develop? Hugely based on sensors, the kind of employment of drones, the kind of design development required in drones that meets army requirement for the future. The ability to absorb technology fast. Otherwise, technology gets developed, it's obsolete by the time you order. Okay, so we have to get out of this loop somehow. Procedurally, we have to work ways. So I would say these are things that I want to see for the future. There are standard things of, let's say, hypersonic missiles, hypersonic weapons. Of course, those are all there in the plan.
And lastly, Bhadauria sir, what is the lasting lesson according to you from Operation Sindoor? Why do you think it is such a landmark in India's defense strategic culture?
To me, the most important lesson is that you need to decide what we need to do. So there was a political will to take hard decisions. Hard results were delivered. Services delivered. Everybody in the system delivered. So to me, the biggest lesson of Sindoor is we need to continue with this mindset. Our mindset has already changed. Our psyche has changed. We need to maintain it for the future. And to me, I am firmly of the view that whatever now these red lines that have been drawn, these are here to stay. They are not going to go away. Anybody in the future, the nation will not accept any less from anybody in the future in a situation like this. So the defense services need to keep that in the mindset. I am sure they are. They need to be further prepared. Our industry needs to see and meet the requirement of the defense services. Okay, you see geopolitically what is happening. So we need to just translate into our own weapons, our own military capability, and this change that has happened, that needs to be continued. So direction has changed. The direction cannot change back. The trajectory may go a little up and down. To me, the future, this will remain. So we need to work towards it.
These red lines are here to stay. That's heartening to hear, Air Chief Marshal Bhadauria, from someone who's covered Pakistani-sponsored terrorism for 20 years. And I never thought I'd actually see the day when India would bomb Bahawalpur and Muridke and inflict the kind of damage, raise the costs of Pakistan's sponsorship of terror. But what you just said, is so heartening to hear. The fact that these red lines are here to stay, and also, most importantly, Indian solutions for Indian wars. Thank you so much for your time and for your thoughts, Air Chief Marshal Bhadauria.
Thank you. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, sir.